I think the thing is that we really cannot design for all sorts of different usage.
Because I think the houses, yes.
So far, usually we give designs first and then we draft out a simple SketchUp and then make sure that we are implementing that space there.
So choosing the correct material is very important.
So all these will also have an effect.
Am I right to assume that the impact that y'all will make, right, to the renovation and the building industry is very instrumental?
We should say that we work together to protect and assist the public.
So for those homeowners who don't know, right, it's good to find an ID who constantly stay updated with the compliance stuff. Renovation isn't just about tiles and mood boards. It's about people and the personalities, as well as the stories that help make the decisions. I'm Astley Ng, aka The Designer. Join me for the Season 2 of the SIXiDER Show. Since we are talking about paint in this particular episode, right? Specifically, most people would associate colors as psychology, and I think many a times they overlook the importance of the science behind it. Is Dulux addressing that angle? Like, it's more than just colors. There are more scientific approaches, and is Dulux doing anything about it?
So when we talk about colours specifically, right, Dulux, we do have, every year we have a colours of the year palette. Like for example, this year is shades, some shades of blue. We have an expert team in the Netherlands that sits together every year, look at the trends in the market, and then brainstorm together with architects, with experts, color experts, and select this carefully selected palette. And we publish this group of colors every year. This year is the True Blue series. So if you look at the Dulux catalog, you will see that the front page is a very nice shade of blue. And last year, our colors of the year was yellow. We also select shades that complement each other to deliver a certain type of aesthetic look to the room that might please homeowners. Color is not static, right? So it always it creates some sort of emotion or feelings in people.
And this year a big kiasu, got 3 colors. Color of the year is colors of the year.
It's all shades of blue.
Yeah.
So they do complement each other very well. And then some people might like dark and intense, but some people might not. So that's why we these 3 colors, some is more lighter pastel kind of blue, and some is very intense and a very deep shade of blue. Yeah, to cater for different moods and feelings.
I think I read somewhere they say blue is associated with calmness and everything.
Yes. In the interior design world, probably from a buyer's point of view, most of the time they associate the blue to boys' room lah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
right.
But in let's say even in open spaces, because traditionally Singaporeans, when they deal with their, let's say, their living halls and all that, they tend to try to avoid gender-specific colors and go very neutral. But I think with what the color of the year for 2026, right, there's this particular lighter shade blue, right, and I find that works very well in open spaces in the living halls as well. But of course, it all depends on whether it suits the specific theme, lah.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with Singaporeans is that they tend to want lighter cream colors. Yeah. Can I just ask, I'm not sure whether you will know this, but do you all ever do research on what is the most sellable color in Singapore?
I can tell about the popular colors. So
okay.
You mentioned those shades of off-white, cream.
Barley white.
Yeah. These shades of whites are quite popular, especially for living room. And then some people would like to have a feature wall in their house, right?
An accent.
Yes. Those shades of grey usually tends to be the more popular ones. But like what Astley said, it depends on the overall aesthetic the homeowner would like to deliver, which can be paired together with furniture, your color of your wardrobe, the bed, your bed frame, sofa.
Or neutral or easy to blend.
Yeah.
I got a question. So, right, basically my husband has very crazy ideas on our house. He said he wants to do a pink feature wall.
Yeah. Go for it.
how do I pair that? Can please like dissuade him? Because he feels like white, it feels a bit too boring. Yeah, so he was like, I want a pop of color. Let's go crazy. Let's do pink. And then his other like idea, right, was flooring, right? AstroTurf.
No, of course, I think your husband wants to kind of make a statement, but you got to think about maintenance, longevity, and whether at the end of the day, whether you will sian or not. From a design's point of view, it's not something that you can escape from. In fact, people escape from work to go back home. So that so-called of respite and refuge is important.
Right.
But for all I know, the AstroTurf is how he associate, how he recluse himself. So I mean, it's not us to kind of say that, but I would think that it's challenging to, if you try to have a robo rock and try to mop the floor with AstroTurf, it's not possible. That's one. Two, colors like the pop colors and all that, it may not be necessarily on the wall. It can also be on accent pieces like the cushions, the sofa, the rugs and all that. And while I think those are easier to change as opposed to like having it painted on the wall, which is slightly more permanent. Though paint is something that you can also quite easily change, but it's something to think about. And I think what she mentioned earlier is that instead of on many walls, you could have it on accent wall, which is also useful because it draws you in. And paired together with the right shade of furniture, right, it can be very exciting and fun to look at.
So if my husband is watching this, right, you heard it, okay? No AstroTurf. No hot pink wall, yeah. Okay, so when we were talking about colours at home and everything, right? So how does the colour affect the overall vibe? And is it something that is very overlooked in the renovation industry?
When it comes to colour selection for the house, it really depends on, firstly, what the house owner wants, right? And also, how does your house look like? For example, do you have like full length windows? Are you going to use warm lighting, cool lighting? So all these will also have an effect on how the color will actually look on your wall. Are you south facing, west facing window? So if let's say your living room have a lot of west sun, right? So what happens is your wall will look very yellow at like 4 p.m., 6 p.m., that kind of timing. You look very yellow. So are you going to choose a yellow color? I think you will you look at the wall, you'll feel very tired. And then it might be a little bit overstimulating for the owner. So I think what he mentioned, the house, at the end of the work day, you come home, you want to rest. It should be something comfortable and inviting to you. Yeah. So I think it depends on all these variables and ultimately what the homeowner wants.
I think there's not enough understanding of color application in interior spaces. I think by and large in Singapore, because you asked whether there is an afterthought, and I think most of the time it is because if you go blend, then it will blend well. So that's one of the way of thinking. It's like you use neutral colors and all that. So they're just a little bit more conservative when it comes to that. And again, there are a few factors, like the majority of us stays in HDB flat. Ceiling height is at 2.6. Already, for some people, they already feel that it's already quite a low ceiling effect. If you introduce a lot of colors, and scientifically speaking, it does affect your psychological sensation. Like if you use yellow color walls, it actually pulls the walls towards you, and you find that it's very constricted. So most of the time, people tend to not want to use yellow color walls unless you have a very long and elongated hallway, and then you can actually paint the yellow color such that it feels a little bit more squarish. So it's those kind of situations that where colors will become very useful. But then again, most people would still rather not introduce these kind of colors because it's going to be hard to coordinate. That's one. The other one, of course, is that when you have very prominent colors, right, there's this fatigue that may be associated. Like your husband says he wants this pink color for how long? Do you think he will sustain this for 5 years, 10 years? So it's not something that he can tahan. Then the other thing, I think the last point is really the psychological impact. Like for example, you go to McDonald's, you always see these two predominant colors, yellow and red. Now if you bring that to your home, right, chances are you may also help you increase your appetite, you know. So you have a skinny problem and no problem. But if someone like me, right, you don't want to introduce those colors to your house. Because you end up, you're always like looking for food. Yeah. So it does have an impact. You don't believe me, you think about it. Imagine you put food on a blue plate. You lose appetite. Yeah. So colors does have that impact.
If you want to gain weight?
Gain weight, yellow and orange.
Oh, yellow, orange plate.
So that really has an impact. So imagine if you want to gain weight, then if the bowl or the plate comes in this red color, everything just looks more appetizing.
It's because it's more stimulating. Like it's a warmer color.
Yeah.
So it stimulates. Whereas like a cooler color, you feel a bit more relaxed.
Just try to imagine you got two restaurants right now. One is painted in all blue, including the signage. One is exactly the McDonald's color scheme. Like close your eyes, imagine, and then try to imagine if you want to pick a restaurant, right? Chances are you won't pick the blue one. Yeah. Let's go straight into understanding more about RCMA, because I think so far in our podcast, right, you guys are the first association related to our industry that we are interviewing. And I think the market wants to know more about RCMA. And because I think you all keep talking about scams and all that, right, it seems that finding an RCMA member or someone who is related to the RCMA, or rather the firm that is joining the association, is a guarantee of 不会被骗吗?
As an RCMA member, we need to run through a check before they can get into RCMA. Most important.
So to be a member, RCMA will audit you guys?
Yes, they need to follow all the rules and regulation, especially the payment gateway, how to collect payment, when the owner should make payment.
So are you saying that RCMA actually has a set of protocols that protects the homeowner's interest when it comes to payment stages?
Yes, because payment are all the homeowner are very sensitive about. That's why we work very closely with Case Trust.
Melvin, if we to introduce it to the homeowners, what kind of role do you think RCMA play? Because just now Jimmy mentioned payment schedules and all that. That's one thing that you all safeguard. Other things? Because you say that the audit is quite stringent to join as a member.
Yeah, so for RCMA side, we got a class, a lesson called CRP, Certified Renovation Practitioner. So RCMA member-wise, all their ID have to go through this course. Okay, in this course, they will learn about how to proper project management, how to communicate with homeowners. Safety is very important in renovation. There's a few stages, so they have to go through this course and they will get the CRP cert. So I think this course is very important, not only to the newer ID, okay, even for some experienced ID like myself, Jimmy, we go to this course also. Okay, it's like a refreshment. At the same time, you can get the latest market regulation updates. For HDB side also. Yeah,
because in terms of compliance, building codes and all that, every year sometimes they will do refreshment. They will do changes. So for those who don't know, like homeowners who don't know, right, it's good to find an ID who constantly stay updated with the compliance stuff. If you don't go attend a class, right, you have to go and Google, you go to BCA site or HDB site to read. There's a lot of things to read. Another thing to also try to understand is that the focus here, or rather for RCMA, is on renovation and contracting work. And I understand that both of you are IDs, but the focus for RCMA is on renovation. And there is another association, which is the SIDES. The focus is on interior design. Is there any crossover, do you think? Is there, like, in terms of responsibility, how is RCMA different from SIDES?
It's quite different because SIDES is more on designing, design. As for RCMA, we will be more on renovation, the guidelines, how to do up the project instead of designing. So we are tied together, but only that we can, it's different things, so it's design and build. We are the build side, I can say.
Jimmy, since you are the speaker of the RCMA My Nice Home and all that, what is the contribution, or rather the advice that you give to homeowners during when they collect their keys for the My Nice Home?
Okay, so my guide is very simple. Okay, as an RCMA, we focus on renovation. Lastly, also, that's why we call it a material supply. So choosing the correct material. okay, is very important. So we talk about NEA always suggests that it's coming in the market to go green. Okay, as green as possible, as because Singapore is so green. So it's using those low formaldehyde E0, E1 plywood. It's using the correct the material, the durability of these material use that can last for many years. So I think these are all the main key factor that RCMA are focusing to share to all the homeowners.
Simply put, SIDS is more like the concept, whereas RCMA is you not only build, but you're also, because your association has the material suppliers.
Yeah.
So 它的效率 in the sense that after you design, people have to build. And so this association is revolving around the people who can build and people who have access to the materials.
Yes.
Yes, so indirectly in RCMA, most of the biggest players, I would say, the member, so a lot are builders. Then lastly, I think RCMA, SIDS, I think into design, I think we are all into design because these are very individual preference. How can be anyone in this trade not into design? If you are not into design, then I think 不用做了咯，怎么做？谁看到你都讨厌你。Project management, choosing the correct material, and lastly, design.
In terms of the material suppliers, both of you are IDs. So you also mentioned that the association has got merchants and suppliers inside. Can you name a few of your merchant members?
I think the biggest one, I would say, Excel Hardware.
Then Heng,
Yeah.
tiles, they got all different type of tiles.
Pioneer Supplier, EcoPlus,
Kiang Ho.
Yeah, Qing Ho, the material supply, or maybe Star Cool Aircon.
Safe to say RCMA is really like an ecosystem of the renovation trade. You not only have the renovators and IDs, you also have the merchant and suppliers inside, which is why just now I was saying that from a building point of view, right, you guys are 比较接地气啦, because you're really talking about the execution of the project.
Yes.
And so your member-wise, supplier, builder, the relationship is very close.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is why am I right to assume that the impact that you all will make, right, to the renovation and the building industry is very instrumental? Because just now you all mentioned about compliance, your designers and your builders all have to take courses and understand.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you are, as a network, your suppliers and your designers are constantly talking so that you all can offer the best for the market. So
That's for sure.
that is like the key benefits of joining RCMA.
Definitely. If you don't join, then you better do it now.
Like all associations, right, especially the trade association, there's always these gaps that the association tries to fix. Like I think quite commonly, just now you mentioned scam and all that. My Nice Home is one way that you all can outreach to homeowners.
Yes.
But are there other things that RCMA is doing now that that is really trying to elevate the industry?
We are working very closely with Case Trust on this. We will do a lot of education videos with Case Trust. We are planning to so that we can educate homeowner on what to take note when you sign a contract. Yeah, so sign with those Case Trust, RCMA firm will be what you get in return. Safety is like insurance like that.
So I think now we are working very closely with Case Trust, like Melvin just said, also together with NEA. Yeah, so about the formaldehyde level, and lastly is homeowner purchase furniture from Taobao or anything. So are there formaldehyde? Are they going green? Is there any harmful to body? And in every case, I think we are going to picture with NEA very, very soon.
So trying to be a devil's advocate 所谓的羊毛出在羊身上Case Trust serves 看似好像是 serve the public, but Case Trust members are essentially the trade. RCMA 看似好像也是在 serve the public, but actually at the end of the day 也是在 take care of 他自己的 members, 就是你们就是装修界的设计师，还有就是那些材料商嘛。Do you think this assumption by homeowners is fair?
We should say that we work together to protect and assist the public. 我可以这样子讲。This is what I think from my point of view.
那 RCMA 跟这个所谓的 consumer, like how much interaction and feedback are you all collecting from the consumer to continuously improve? I ask this question is because, of course, there are associations, but there are also associations that 因为讲白了 it's a trade 工商嘛，那它是其实当然是要照顾它的 members， 那就是 the industry， 那就是所谓的 protect 那个饭碗种种的。那我问的问题是因为 of course because 我们这个频道呢有很多 homeowners， 他们想知道的是 at the end of the day right what are you all doing for the consumer side right is there enough conversation between RCMA and the public？ 你讲到有买nice home， 这个是 how often does that happen？
哇，一年最少有20 to 21买nice home event。
什么情况才会有这个买nice home的？
你是新加坡人吗？
我是啊。
就会买家吗？会跟政府买家，就有 BTO 吗？有 BTO 你就会看到我跟 Melvin。But
OK， 限制在 BTO，resale 呢
？resale 的话也有。
做我 resale 的也是可以 attend。
看 SIXiDER 的 marketing 还是我们的 marketing 就有了一定会有了，你们一定要看
没有人在比哦，没有人在比。来，继续。
因为 for resale 跟 BTO 有差别，区别是蛮大的。OK， 最大的区别 resale 的 timeline 比较长。OK， 所以我每次 educate homeowner， 如果你是 resale 整间敲到完 ，OK，first thing 我们要 hacking，lighting and electrical plan，plumbing plan，有 tiling plan 等一下有 fall ceiling 有 carpentry 所以如果一个人 promise 你2个月2个半月会完 I think 是一个 red flag 所以这些是我们每次就一直在 educate 的。
就是你们的 买nice home 的时候，你们拿出来讲。
对，我们都会讲
When it comes to outdoor, right? I think there's two types. Since most of our Singaporeans, right, we stay in apartments, whether it's condo or HDB. The outdoor part is quasi outdoor not really full outdoor. Like balcony is also semi outdoor Then of course then the landed, right, or patios. In those kind of situation, right, especially for apartments, that they say they want to have all these like decking or trellis. What is the most common misconception these homeowners have when they want to do this kind of decking and all that? Maybe we start with you.
I believe a lot of times actually it depends on how they want to use the space actually. So maybe they have some sort of like fantasy idea when they go traveling and all that. They want their balcony to look like some Balinese resort or something. So they try to bring that into their own home balcony. But sometimes it really doesn't work that way because if you are talking about like apartments balcony and all that, we have to take into consideration like the size of the balcony even. So if you're going to clutter your whole balcony to look like a Balinese style resort, right, it doesn't really work that way. You might end up not using that space after all.
But it is still a real estate that they paid for and if you don't decor, then the balcony is going to be like the glorified clothes hanging space but let's say if just now we were talking about like they are looking at a Balinese look in order for that to happen, what are the materials that you need?
If let's say they really have a big enough space to do the things that they want, then they should look into materials that are actually suitable for outdoor weather, like rain and sun, all that. So if it happens to be the monsoon season, I think you probably don't get to use your resort, your Balinese resort a lot also. So we might have to look into things like shades to either block away part of the sun or the rain also so that you can still make it a usable space for yourself.
I get it. I hear from you that balcony itself should be more functional as opposed to aesthetics. That's the first and foremost how you use a space. Aesthetic can come through some decor stuff but the utilitarian part of that space is more important. So on that note, right, maybe we talk about decking. Since decking and balcony, right, and rain, there's this common fear that flooding may happen. For example, if you were to level up your balcony to almost the same level as you're living, is this a wrong thinking that there will be a flooding issue, or it should not be an issue?
Usually the design of the actual floor plan is already has a drop for the outdoor balcony.
Correct.
So if you build a decking, there is already a aluminium structure below to raise it up. So if it's done properly, the decking should feel flat, but then the structure below will just be helping to make it even. So no, there shouldn't be any drainage issue unless it's not a balcony and you're trying to create a balcony feel.
Maybe we assume that we have a HDB EM, 2-story one. Normally, that part they don't do window covering. So at most it's bamboo cheeks, right? Because it's a very high, almost double volume opening.
We actually just did one.
And yeah.
We covered window.
Can cover window?
Can.
Oh.
Inside GFS.
Under
GFA.
But let's assume that we don't have lah. And the customer, like what we say, want the resort look, right? So bamboo cheeks. Bamboo cheeks can also ward off shade, ward off water to a certain extent. And then at the same time, they want the natural look lah, so they have plants then we have decking. A common concern is that the leaves drops, right? The leaves drops through the gaps, and then because underneath the decking, right, usually that's where the water will flow to the drainage, and if the leaves drop in, the maid that said don't know, will sweep the leaf into the gaps, right? Somehow or rather, it all flows in, blocks the gutter, then the flooding happens. This kind of scenario, can it be avoided?
For the leaves to really drop in underneath the decking, right, chances are not really that high. If it really happens, it will be over a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Because the gaps between the decking, right, is
small.
Is quite small. It's not large enough for a lot of leaves to drop in. The decking itself is actually a little bit elevated with a base structure underneath, so that it will allows for the water to actually flow. And then at the floor trap area, we always open an access panel, so the helper or the owner, they can actually remove the access panel to clean up the floor trap area regularly.
But this decking, once it's down, right, apart from the access panel that y'all can do servicing, the rest of the panels cannot move out to do maintenance.
Usually when the whole decking is done there, we don't really remove it. But then as time goes by, new technology and all that, we can actually remove the decking panels, to clean if we need to. But although we don't really recommend that the owner take it out like ever so often, right, to remove it and do the cleaning, because there's actually this new clip system that allows the decking to be removed every piece so that you can clean the bottom.
I think the thing is that we really cannot design for all sorts of different usage. Some people, the balcony can do camping. Some people, they treat it like I will do barbecue. For example, the EM, the one I mentioned, right? It's almost like you can do a bit of barbecue because it's got high ceiling and everything. Then the food drops, then they feel gao wei, they want to do cleaning, right? So today's technology, is there any such decking that we can actually take out and do maintenance? That's why you mentioned the clip system.
Yeah, correct.
But let's say from an installation point of view, can you like design it like every few feet can take out one? Is it ideal to do something like that?
We can do many access panels, although it's not really advisable because the subfloor itself, be it the tiles or the cement, the concrete, right? It is not flat and level. Usually there will be a gradient. So if every piece is like loose panels, right, then your whole decking will be loose and a lot of sound.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Your advice?
I think access panel better, yeah, because every piece is cut into the specific size also. Sometimes the walls are not straight. So if you replace that one and you don't put it back to the original place where it was taken out, it wouldn't fit anymore.
In terms of condo and landed patios, where I think landed patios is more exposed to the elements, which is harder to design.
I think both okay.
Both also okay.
Yeah, depends on what they want.
Yeah.
If they want open concept, then we design it maybe more to pergola. So there's a bit of shading, open, close, and then if it's fixed structures, roofing, then you can really enclose the space. Still keep decking on the ground, and it looks like a balcony, and have your dining there. Or even simple ones we usually suggest is to keep maybe your sofa, but build it against a wall where you actually have more exposed space.
In terms of condo, do you see more and more homeowners wanting to level the so-called the living and the balcony such that they gain more space?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think
Houses
the
getting
houses,
smaller.
so they will like move their dining area to be outside. I've even come across cases where the balcony is not big enough, so they have like half the dining table outside and half of it inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really challenging. Oh.
Yeah, correct. So in such cases, then we have to make sure that the balcony itself really allows us to make the decking to be the same level as the living room.
There are some condo projects where there are planters, right? Right, planters, and then there's the balcony part. So this part and the planters probably raised up. And then so what happened is that they want to gain that whole space and they may want to box up the planters such that after you cover up the planters, you probably gain another 1.5 feet or so, right? Is this allowed?
We have done many projects like that. So usually it is allowed, but then it will still be best for the owner or the IDs to consult the management there to verify. In case after you do up, right, and then the management comes and say something else, then you will have to remove it, then it will be something
so far usually we give designs first and then we draft out a simple SketchUp and then make sure that we are implementing that space there. Then we will send to management also or BCA.
For decking on the planter to cover, right, actually is basically like a removable panel. So it's not a fixed structure over the planter itself. So most of the time it can go through.
And I think with that, right, we've come to the end of this episode where we had 2 outdoor experts, Serene from XingFloors and then Marcus from Atrellis. So if you like this episode, do remember to subscribe, like, share, follow, hit that subscribe button, pound it, right? And then we'll see you guys soon in the next episode of the SIXiDER Show. Bye!